Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm not sure which platform you're watching this on, but thank you for your support. I hope that you continue to support. And I'm reading from this month, The Making of America, because we're trying to figure out where we go from here. We're trying to figure out how we got to this point. And I will try to bring you relevant books and try to bring some more psychology and philosophy, but right now we're going to deal with politics. A New World Divisible. The 13 British colonies in America are frequently at odds until Britain's misguided rule sends a compelling message. Come together right now. The first chapter of the story of the making of America covers the 10 years between 1765 and 1775, roughly the period between the Stamp Act and the first British-American skirmishes at Lexington and Concord. The events of this period center around a single grand theme, the growth of a sense of unity among the heterogeneous British settlements in America. A mental evolution summed up in the Latin phrase engraved on the penny, e pluribus unum, out of many, one. The development of this shared sense of a common destiny among formerly desperate or disparate colonies and individuals was the beginning of the process that led directly to the Declaration of Independence in 1776 by a new entity on the world stage. A confederation of former colonies called itself the United States of America. If we are to appreciate the efforts of those who bridged the divide between pluribus and unum, we need to begin by measuring the divide. In 1763, the British succeeded in driving the French out of North America in the Great War of Empires. The Europeans called the 7 Years' War, and Americans called the French and Indian War. At this time, the British colonies along the Atlantic coast of North America were a clutch of dissimilar settlements. Each colony was its own small world, and the differences among their residents far outpaced their similarities. Colonists worshipped the different churches, or in different churches, grew different crops, lived in very different environments, worked at different trades, only 150 years removed from the British settlements in the New World. Most Americans were still strangers in a strange land, more interested in building a future for themselves and their children than in creating a new nation. We don't realize how large the United States is. This territory is large, massive. In the 1760s, the colonies made up a fascinating, diverse pageant of humanity. Beaux and belles flirting in Savannah and Philadelphia, Yankee sea captains sailing out of New Bedford in search of whales, lawyers in powdered wigs and knee breeches arguing cases in Richmond and Boston, black slaves from equatorial Africa acclimating to new lives in Maryland and Georgia, Puritan preachers condemning slavery in Massachusetts, butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers hiring apprentices in Charleston and Baltimore, merchants and traders competing for business in New York City, and everywhere along the vast reaches of the frontier, wives in homespun, raising children and crops while their husbands hunted, fished, bartered for goods and cleared the land. Along the edges of the wilderness lived the original Americans, the Indians, I should say the natives, who had been pushed back into the forest by the tide of European settlement. Although these Native Americans had forged alliances with both the British and the French during the recent war, they represented an unstable element, subject to no organized colonial or crown power that further made life in the colonies unpredictable, dangerous, and troubled. Divided by geography, religion, economy, heritage, and in some cases language, many German speakers, for instance, were settling in Pennsylvania. These first Americans did not regard themselves as united and had no reason to. In fact, many of them did not yet primarily identify themselves as American. They thought of themselves as British citizens living in North America and defined themselves by their colony as Virginians, Rhode Islanders, or New Yorkers. We've always been divided. So this whole idea of being united as Americans again is a fantasy. The colonies were also from equal in size and riches. Some of them were enormous. All of Carolina was divided out of the British colonies, of the first British colony, vast Virginia, for royal fiat. Then this new colony split apart again to form North and South Carolina. Some of them were tiny. Rhode Island was an afterthought in the grand scheme of colonial settlement, and its size reflects that fact. Some colonies like Virginia, New York, and Connecticut were landed. They claimed vast territory stretching west beyond the Allegheny Mountains to the Mississippi River. Other colonies were landless. Their characters from the crown left them with no room to grow. Some colonies like Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Massachusetts had been founded on a sense of religious mission. William Penn called Pennsylvania a holy experiment. Others like New Jersey and New York had been established with an eye to commerce and trade. One deep colonial division would chart the future of the nation. Some colonies, especially the great agrarian colonies of the South, were already deeply reliant on the slave trade by the 1760s. Other colonies, mostly in the North, had little need for slaves. That the residents of this crazy quilt of mismatched settlements would ever come to view themselves as one people seems utterly unlikely. Yet the colonies did come together, and it was that great uniter of men, a common enemy, that did the trick. Britain was that enemy. Its mismanagement of the colonies took many forms over many years, yet all its mistakes reflect a single monumental misperception. The king and his ministers failed to understand that in carving a society out of a wilderness, the Americans had shaped themselves into a new breed of men. This new man was an independent spirit who already possessed the germ of what we now call the American dream. He was an optimist who believed he could shape with his own hands a future better than the past, unlimited by Britain's age-old barriers of class and custom. The colonists enjoyed a great advantage remarkable for its absence rather than its presence. They were liberated from the burdens of the past. The New World was originally a geographical term, but it can be seen to stand for something larger. In this new land, a new kind of life was being created, in which individual men were free agents, capable of forging their own futures, unhobbled by the confines of the old, rigid structures of Europe. This new world had seen no Middle Ages. It was home to no dukes, earls, or princes of the church. It was a tabula rasa, where ambitious, hardworking men could write their own ticket, and then it came time for them to write their own government. There were few vested interests outside the crown to oppose them. This frontier world bred exhilarating new habits of mind, encouraging self-reliance and rewarding initiatives. Is it any wonder that when 2 years after the end of the French and Indian War, Britain's Parliament began ordering Americans to jump, the colonists refused to ask how high? So just remember that we've always been divided. The question is your group going to get what it needs? And if we can have group and ethnic cooperation, and everybody can get what they need. And that's where we are. And if you think about it, that's where we've always been. I want to thank you again for your support. And until next time, take care of your mind, take care of your body, and be safe.